Welcome to the Evolution Partners podcast, where I talk with the world's leading thinkers, planners, and doers who are helping to build great companies in their own way. We learn how the work they're doing is creating an impact and get to know a little bit more about them and what makes them tick. This episode is brought to you by Evolution Partners, where we help leaders to confidently build enduring great companies using our proven, structured, strategic planning process that ensures you build and execute the right plan. Check us out at evolutionpartners.com.au. Also, you can check out our books, Made to Thrive, outlining how to be a great CEO, as well as Onboarded, which is about making your new hires more effective faster. John Sanei is a futures strategist, best-selling author, global keynote speaker, and bold change maker. He's responsible for helping countless organisations shift, elevate, and evolve far beyond their current perceptions and present-day tasks. He's worked with some of the top leaders in the world, including CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, heads of state and government leaders, board members of education institutions, and even royal families. John's books include What's Your Moonshot?, Magnetize, Foresight, Future Next, and Who Do We Become? You can find John at johnsanei.com. John, what I see in you is someone who has an abundance of energy, drive, and curiosity, which when combined leads you to think a lot about who we are and where we're going. Also, I see a desire to help people understand just how important some of these things are. If that resonates with you, please tell us, how did you come to be in this place?
Oh, it's a wonderfully well-structured question. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for the intro. Great to be with you, Brad. You're right. I am incredibly curious, which made me a terrible student. I was expelled from school many different times and just could not sit still, and actually left school quite defeated because I just wasn't academic in any way. I couldn't get accepted into university and left feeling dumb in many ways, thinking, well, this is really, I'm just going to be quite a simple guy for the rest of my life because I couldn't get my marks right. But this curiosity has now gotten me to realize that I like to think about multiple different things, that none of them are really subjects at school. And now I lecture at universities, but I've never been to one. So this really shows you that schooling was kind of made for 25% of the human population. And the rest of us have kind of squeezed ourselves into that system in many different ways. And I'm so very happy that the system is falling apart so that now we all can express ourselves in new ways. But very quickly, to just explain that my real passion can be kind of like summed up under one quote. And the quote is, complexity is the enemy of execution. And what we see around the world is when something is too complex for somebody, what they do is they delete, distort, and generalize that information for it to either fit into their head or not even touch anything that they're thinking about. And we do this without even knowing we're doing this. And the smarter you are, the more of an identity you have in a specific sector, the less adaptable you are and the less you want to be engaging in anything like this. And so my job is really quite simple. And the way I framed it for myself is I simplify human evolution and advancement so that your awareness can start to see things in the future that you're currently blind to. And two, how do you simplify organizational structures so you're able to both keep the lights on and plant seeds for tomorrow, which requires different capabilities. And this is the big mistake that most organizations make, is they want their existing teams to be both innovative and disruptive, which is an almost impossibility because organization after organization around the world that was super successful all of a sudden is not, and people are surprised by it. Well, there's no surprise. The characters and capabilities of your existing team didn't have the awareness to see what was ahead of them because of their legacy thinking and where they come from. So simply, I simplify human evolution and simplify organizational restructuring for the future.
Brilliant. So much to unpack there. I want to start with your book, Magnetize. Now, in the book, Magnetize, you talk about shadows that shape our thinking and behavior, which we carry from our formative experiences.
That's right.
And that the only way we can truly live meaningful and contented lives is to unpack and resolve these. Mm-hmm. You go into a great amount of detail in how that affected you which is brilliant to see you treating yourself as a subject. Can you tell us about these shadows?
Well, shadow work is Carl Jung's work around the fact that many of our personalities are actually driven by unknown emotional states that are sitting in our subconscious that we don't even know we have. Our psyche is being developed not only from formative years, but from even our parents' lessons and their parents' lessons that are sitting within our family lineage that we don't have any idea about. And once I started understanding these shadows, I started to realize that leaders around the world are suffering from this exact psychological desperation for recognition and survival. And what shadows do is they move you into a place of defensiveness, and you defend yourself against the world. You don't explore uncertainty, you defend certainty. And sometimes to your own peril, if not always to your own peril. And so as I started to unpack my own shadows around what had happened in my marriage, and again, my marriage, when I wrote about my marriage and it's not working because of my sexual shadows, that is very much driven from my family and the lineage, I can't tell you how many men came to me after my book launches in tears, sharing with me what is going on in their marriage, and they had no idea why they couldn't do X, Y, and Z with their wife, why they were whatever else they were doing. And it shows you that most humans, if not all humans, have these shadows, and they show up in ways that actually are destructive to our lives in many ways. And the more I started to think about my own shadows, the more strategy sessions I was doing with executives, I started to almost pinpoint shadows. I was like, he's got that shadow, she's got that shadow, he's got that shadow. And so I started realizing, as we go through this amount of change that's ahead of us, the ones that are the most adaptable, and the quote that always comes to mind is, strong opinions held loosely. And the people that are able to have strong opinions held loosely are the ones that have cleared their shadows, are the ones that are happy to explore uncertainties, or are happy to release identities, to develop new ones. And this is really what leadership is about. You think leadership is about having that MBA and understanding numbers. Yes, that's a very small part of it, and becoming less of a part of it because of AI. And so what we have to start showing up is as magnanimous human beings, as this magnetic, desiring human that is a very different type of leader that allows for this optimism and uncertainty. And so shadow work is something leaders never talk about. And when I go into organizations, I ask them, when have you done trauma healing for yourself and for your organizational personality? And people look at me like it's a strange question, and it's strange because you've never thought of it, but you don't realize that a lot of your profit and a lot of your innovation sits behind your ability to release old identities and old ideas to develop new ones. And so yes, shadow work is a massively important thing for our specific individual lives, but even as important for our organizational leadership skills.
Well, the culture of an organization is really an extension of the founder or leader or CEO, ultimately.
That's right.
It's
Yes.
what they find acceptable, what they're prepared to walk, what they're prepared to walk past or not walk past. And so this lineage, as you describe it, these shadows, I mean, unless you can sort your own stuff out, it's going to have an ongoing negative effect. And you won't be able to become who you truly can become, is the message that I took.
That's exactly it, is that, I use this line in one of my talks. It's, your actions are so loud, I can't hear a word you're saying. Yeah. And it's a lot of that is these leaders, you have beautiful values and you have beautiful visions and missions. But when you are triggered, you act like a child that's petulant, traumatized, and angry and sulking and vindictive, and all of a sudden you don't want to be those. Nobody sets out to be vindictive, angry, and upset and dramatic and divisive, but somehow we do. And so then all the ideas around your values now fall out the window. And think about every war that's happening in the world today comes from a shadow and a trigger of a man that is upset about X, Y, and Z for his ego to be hurt, and now he goes to war and people die. So it's almost as if it's not just war. It's true. Think about organizations that are ruining the earth, that are ruining humans' lives in pharmaceuticals, in sugar companies that are selling sugar, in mining. I know Perth is a big mining city. In mining as well, so what has happened to these leaders is that we have slowly slowly demoralized ourselves, like taking the morals out of our decisions because of these psychological issues that we have. So we can't see the world as a collaborative, warm place that we can share things. It's one of greed, exploitation to the maximum. And it all comes from this lack of internal peace that we can't actually achieve because we haven't done the work for it.
How do you do the work? How did you do the work? How did you
very good
get
question.
from A to Z?
Yes, very good question. And look, mine came from bankruptcy. So I was very successful in my 20s. I lost everything at 30, 31, 32. And I went into this deep, dark place because I didn't understand what had happened. In my 20s, I was more successful than all my friends. I had the cars and the trappings and all the things. And look, the worst combo in the world is high levels of testosterone and lots of money. You think you're indestructible and bulletproof, which you see in so many men around the world today. It's this ego, so big ego. And, fortunately or unfortunately, they haven't been taken down. And I got taken down. And it was a blessing, a huge blessing in disguise. And so the way I started to research it and started to realize where it was is that we have to realize that our personality is determined by 10% conscious, 90% subconscious or unconscious. And what we have to start to realize is that if we don't access our unconscious brain patterning, no matter how much therapy you do, you can only move the needle by 1 or 2 degrees. The real work comes when you can access subconscious patterning. So you have to ask yourself, how do I access subconscious patterning in my healing processes rather than just sitting in a therapy or a workshop and thinking that's going to change everything? And I'm not saying they won't change anything, but the massive changes sit in your subconscious. And the way you access your subconscious is to alter your state. And this is where things become a little bit tricky because we've been duped into the idea of legality and illegality. And anything that changes your consciousness is, weirdly enough, illegal. The governments have created a story that says alcohol, pharmaceuticals, sugar, and gluten that keep you dumb and numb are all legal, and anything that awakens your consciousness, ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, San Pedro, marijuana, all these, oh my God, those are terrible. That means that you're going off the rails when you're touching those. But look at the indoctrination that's happened. So everything that allows you to really deeply shift your consciousness alters your state, moving you from this reality to a parallel reality based on a substance inside a plant that gives you a different perspective of your reality that you live in right now. So I've done a multitude of ayahuasca ceremonies, a multitude of magic mushroom ceremonies, a multitude of meditation workshops, and all of them do one thing. They alter your state so that you can look at your existing life from an objective point of view to understand the patterning. Because you can only see the patterning when you step out of your consciousness. You can't see it when you're in it. There's a great line that says, we don't know who discovered water, but we know it wasn't a fish. And so within your consciousness, you just can't see it. And so just like a business needs fresh eyes, so does your persona, and so does your psyche. And when you give yourself the opportunity to just tread along that process of moving your consciousness into another space, let me tell you, it is profound, the amount of change that you not only bring to yourself, but to your family ahead of you and the family behind you.
That's the thing. I had the good fortune to see the Prime Minister of Japan speak and his wife speak in a separate event through a translator. And she said the burden that is carried when you are a blue blood, because you are acting on behalf of 100 generations who have all sacrificed to put you where you are today. And that's another way to look at lineage. But she said the pressure, if you think that we just got to dress nice and be polite, the pressure is immense, which is not seeking empathy for the rich and famous, but it's another way to look at lineage.
Well, the truth is that we've all got pressure, and we all think that rich people have less pressure. And the psyche is the same. In COVID, if you lost $1 million and you had 8, or you lost $1,000 and you had $8,000, the stress is the same. Like, you don't just because you got, the stress is exactly the same. So I don't know, like this idea that rich people have it easier. I don't know so much. The psyche stuff is the same. But anyway, let's keep moving.
So I want to change gears and talk about your book, Who Do We Become? And I tell you, that book, I want to start by just saying thank you for your vulnerability. It was just so touching. You just went down and down and down.
I did.
In the book, right, you say that people with resilience cultivate self-awareness and mindfulness. And I get that. But how do we cultivate resilience?
You know, I wrote that book 3 years ago now, right? And
Yep.
I've had a change of mind on resilience, and let me explain. Resilience is the ability to respond and recover to a place in your life.
Yep.
And it doesn't allow for magic and imagination. And so when we talk about the fact that we need to be resilient, it is not talking about thriving in the future of your world. It's talking about responding and recovering to the world to bring stability to it.
Yes.
And in this world that we're in right now, I think we need more than stability. Stability is getting you to tread water. It's not actually allowing you to think in huge, imaginative, striding way of thinking. And so for me, the idea of resilience needs to have a third pillar to it. You need to respond, recover, but then you need to reimagine. And most people don't know how to reimagine in an optimistic way. What we do is we reimagine in a we catastrophize our future. Because we're sitting in a bit of stress, because we've been trained for certainty and now the future is all about uncertainty, now all of a sudden we have to ask ourselves, well, how do I become optimistic for uncertainty when I've only been taught to be resilient, to respond and recover, to bring stability to my economies of scale system, to bring more efficiency and profitability, to keep it as smooth as possible? That is an excellent skill for the economies of scale system in the Industrial Revolution. That is the death of your strategy when it comes to quantum uncertainty of the future. So we have to add a layer to resilience to say, look, the way you cultivate resilience, of course, is the emotional fortitude to come to a place of balance, to find peace in uncertainty. But the next step is as important, is how do you allow yourself to optimistically imagine and rehearse a future that you want to move into rather than one that is all about catastrophizing the future because it doesn't fit into the story of your past. So yes, resilience is important, but we have to add to it.
And that's a great segue to what you call, and I love it, old men energy. Now, I don't know if it's the South African accent or the Australian accent, if it's men or man, but I'll just say it.
Yeah,
old men energy. It produces a mindset of fear, anger, and scarcity, and it's driving so much of the world. Specifically, how might this affect entrepreneurs?
Well, look, you understand that if you watch anything from Kathy Wood, and I don't know if you're a fan, I'm a huge fan, from ARK Investment, and she talks about the fact that investing money has not been about innovation, but about benchmarks. And what has happened is that older men are caught up in the idea of defending what they know and petrified of what they don't. And what they don't understand, they boo-boo away, they shame away, they say it's rubbish. They just don't want to engage with it because they don't understand it. Now, I don't know if I wrote about The Fourth Turning in my book, but The Fourth Turning, the book, which is a fantastic book I recommend everybody to read, explains to you that every 80 years we have the same cycles happening on Earth. And the last time an 80-year cycle ended, the characters that showed up was Mussolini and Hitler to keep the old world alive. Now we have Trump and Putin who wants to keep the old world alive. Why? Because men in their 60s, 70s, and 80s are desperate to hold on to some resemblance of what they understand to be success and their understanding of what it means to have power. But then you look at this idea of what the American Senate is doing, and even your government, and look, every government in the world is like got these 80-plus-year-olds in power that have absolutely no idea about what's going on in the world. Literally have no idea.
I agree.
And so what they're trying to do is, and unfortunately, we are still determined by baby boomer rules when it comes to profitability, shareholders over everybody else, just the whole dogma of this, you must work hard to be successful. That's a dogma that's been created by the system itself, that the system wanted to celebrate us only if we fitted into the system when it was education, organization, and religion. When you didn't fit into those three systems, you were tabooed out of your society in many different ways. So we sit with today old men's rules that do not make sense in a world today. Because how do you focus on efficiencies and profitabilities over everything else when you need to put at least 20% of your profits into disruption ideas and think about tomorrow? I don't know if you know this, but I found this out recently, that 20% of all bees do not go to the same places where other bees go. 20% of bees wander. And the reason they wander is because they need to find new fields. If they don't find new fields and cows come and eat the old field of flowers, your whole honeybee hive is dead, literally dead. And so what have we done? We've created 100% of our focus on profitability and efficiency, nothing about exploration, minor percentage around innovation, and then wonder why, this new company arrived and took us out. So we are dealing with old man energy, and what I even call it further in one of my books is the horny teenage boy syndrome, which is really, there's a horny teenage boy. My publisher didn't want me to put horny, so he made me put teenage boy syndrome. But really what has happened is that we have these older men with horny teenage boy syndrome inside them, which says, what do they want? They want more. When do they want it? Now. What about tomorrow? Who cares? What is the New York Stock Exchange? That is the stock exchange. We want it now. We don't care about tomorrow. And that is a very immature, very greedy, very shadow-driven perspective, which we have to heal.
So you are establishing yourself as a international futurist and speaker, jet-setting all over the world, and then all of a sudden, someone eats bat soup in Wuhan, China, and the bat was from a allegedly a
lab,
irrefutable place.
Yeah.
And suddenly everything stops in your world, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then this is what's in this book. And then you say, you talk about your reflection during that time, and you say, and I quote, "There is no reflection without stillness." Why is reflection and stillness so important for entrepreneurs?
Wow, great question. I saw this thing on Instagram yesterday. It said, you can never see your reflection in a boiling pot of water.
Yes.
You need that boiling pot of water to calm down, and then you start to see your reflection. It's exactly that. It's like, I'm a big proponent of meditation. A big part of my talk is meditation, and I did that for you in Perth as well. But the science of meditation tells us, in a summary, in a nutshell, it says, meditation gives you the opportunity to slow down enough to realize that you are just a story.
Yeah.
And when you don't slow down enough, you're never able to see the fact that you're just a story. And then you can't actually interrogate your story because you are so entrenched in your story that your story just seems like there's no way out. And this is really what the movie The Matrix was about. And in its absolute documentary genius, it wasn't a fantasy, it was a documentary in many ways. It told us that you have this option, blue pill, red pill. What does that mean? Blue pill, red pill means, can you slow down enough to realize that you're not just your story? This is a avatar created by your psyche, by your memories. And so what the stilling does for you, it helps you slow down enough to become objective, not subjective, about the decisions you make about the future. And you realize that often you don't need another $25 million. You're fine. You've made it. You can actually sit down and relax a little bit. But you know what the problem is that the world of economies of scale and efficiencies has created a greed within the culture, embedded into the culture, that says it's never enough, which means that you never arrive at joy, happiness, and peace. Which means that you never arrive at stillness, which means that you die with lots of money and angst inside your body, which is, what is the point? Like, I often think to myself, as like, so you've got your second Mercedes-Benz, you're now the CEO of the company, you're having 2 affairs and you're on Prozac. Like, why? Like, who cares? Like, if you don't have peace, you have nothing, to be honest with you. And so I've gone through that process, and I think the reason I can write about it is that I was poor. I come from a single mom family. I made exceptional amounts of money at 25, 26, 27. I had multiple businesses. And then I lost everything. And I realized, hang on a second. I was unhappy when I had no money. I was unhappy when I had money because I just wanted a bit more. And then I was unhappy when I was bankrupt. I was like, hang on, this equation doesn't work, actually. And I think that many people up there with all that success also come to the realization that that equation is not the equation that we should be chasing. But somehow, we've been duped by Hollywood, by economies of scale, by all this glitz and glamour of the world out there, that this is the way for us to do. So my mission is, yes, I'm a futurist, but actually what I'm trying to do is get you to ask much more important questions about how do you show up in the future, and ultimately who do you become as you evolve into this future. It's not about you working harder, faster and sharper. It's about you evolving into a new type of human being.
And speaking about evolving, one of the things since I've read your books that keeps popping up for me is AQ, adaptability
Yes.
quotient. Now, we know what IQ is, intelligence quotient, fairly well known in society. We know what EQ is, emotional quotient. But you talk about AQ, which, drawing on your previous point, we need to evolve. Tell us about AQ.
Yeah. AQ has got, I mean, it's a massive topic. There's books written on it. There's companies called AQ. There's a whole bunch of things on it. But two things that underpin AQ. And the first quote is from Einstein. He says, you cannot solve a problem from the same awareness that created it. Which means that if you have an awareness that's been educated and baked into your brain from the Industrial Revolution, and you don't change your awareness, you can't actually see solutions ahead of you, which means you're not adaptable. Ultimately, it's just not adaptable. You're so stuck on your old story. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, what is awareness and how quickly do I change it so I start to see solutions ahead of me that I otherwise couldn't have seen? And this is an example. For example, Zara has gone from $19 billion to $11 billion in 4 years. And you ought to ask yourself, how didn't the executives of Zara not see the opportunities of Shein and Temu when they were so stuck in the Industrial Revolution thinking? And if you look at the car sales for Audi, Mercedes-Benz and BMW, down the toilet. Why? Because they couldn't, for the life of them, see EVs and hybrid. They were so caught up in combustion engines and the efficiencies of existing investments, they just couldn't change their awareness. So that's the first question. So what adaptability? BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Zara had no adaptability because they're at zero, because their awareness was stuck. The second quote is from Alvin Toffler, who says, you cannot solve the illiterate of the 21st century will not be the ones who cannot read and cannot write, but the ones who cannot unlearn to relearn. And so what we have is an inability to unlearn and like a lack of understanding of how to change awareness. So when it comes to adaptability, your only mission is to develop the personality that allows you to unlearn old behaviors. And when I say unlearn, I mean, that's a contentious point. What I really mean when I say unlearn is develop new neural pathways at pace where they become the most energy efficient and the old ideas become much more energy needing. So our brains are always looking for creating more systemized ways of thinking to save energy. And so when you start to create new neural pathways through the rehearsal and imagination of new possibilities and optimism towards uncertainty, you'll literally create a more adaptable brain. Literally. This is not figuratively. Your brain naturally becomes more fluid in the way it starts to perceive parts of the future. And in that exact process, what you start to do is you change your awareness. And as you start to change your awareness, you start to see solutions ahead of you by creating new neural pathways that allows more emotional intelligence and more adaptability. And really the future skill is your ability to unlearn to relearn at pace. And the slower you do that, the quicker younger people will be overtaking you, the quicker AI will become your direct competition. And yesterday I made a video about why it's important for us to become brilliant in the future. And the reason is that AI will now integrate itself into our society in two ways. Structures of business will come into two ways. You'll have the AI run restaurant with AI robots cooking food, AI robots delivering food, and this product will become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And then you'll have the organic restaurant. We'll have human people cooking, human people serving, and that will become an expensive exercise for us to engage with. But here's the most important part. Only the best of the best will be cooking and serving. And if you're not the best of the best, and if you're not brilliant in what you do, you'll get caught up in the wave that's AI, which makes you become redundant and irrelevant. So your skill of the future is your ability to adapt to what's happening ahead of you, not what you knew before, not your legacy, not your old identity. You have to evolve it.
So if I stitch those two things together, I saw that video yesterday, and it was on point. It was good. And what I'm thinking is, if I replay that back to you, what I'm hearing, in order to unlearn, we've got to dive deep into the topic's breadth. Tell me I'm wrong if I am, but to create new neural pathways, if we want to unlearn something, we don't just focus on the singular deep area that we know. We've got to go wide, and we've got to learn fast about all of the different arenas and different perspectives about the topic. And if we don't do that, we'll end up not working in the robot restaurant and not working in the organic restaurant. We'll be not working.
Yeah, useless. It'll be useless. Look, it's really about creating magnetic desire inside your being to be so curious about a topic that nothing stops you, and you're not actually learning it for any specific reason. You're just learning it, engaging with it because you just love the topic. And so it's not about having a breadth. It's about your unique idea of what you find exciting. So Brad, let's say you love gardening, you love strategy, and you love HR. Let's just say you become a specialist in that space because of your multitude holistic approach to understanding those subjects that all come together in your unique way. And the example I always use to people is that I travel around the world in business class, which has been my dream from a young boy when I was in single mom family. Like, I remember getting onto a plane and going, what's going on the left? Why do I keep going to the right? And now that I'm in this age and doing what I'm doing, I get flown around the world just to share my unique perspective. That's it. Like I've done nothing else. I've just researched my uniqueness. And so do I have a breadth of many subjects? No. I have a breadth of human evolution through neuroscience, business strategy, futurism, and that's it. That's kind of all I've combined because I know the breadth of that. Now, what is created within me is a magnetic desire, and this magnetic desire has allowed me to go down those rabbit holes for hours, days, and weeks on end to come up with books and talks and that sort of thing. So really, that's the thing you need to ask yourself. Number one is, what is my curiosity, and how do I follow it at every minute of every day to let it lead me down that space of magnetic desire to create a unique perspective so that I can become current in my unique perspective and sell that to the world around me.
The Stoics had a phrase called the uninquiring. And if you can imagine a triangle or a pyramid, it classed the sage was the once in a generation knower. At the bottom, the vast majority of the population was what they called uninquiring, people who weren't curious. And this kind of leads to my next question. Drawing on what you've said there, the AI, we've got ChatGPT 4.5 at the moment, and that's got a IQ, I would say, depending on the topic, somewhere around Einstein, but it's not stopping, right? This is Moore's law.
Doubling up every 5.5 months. 5.5 months.
Yeah, by the time Santa Claus comes, we don't even know where we're going to be. So if we've got this major challenge about curiosity, going back to that thing, the uninquiring. If this is not people's normal frame of reference, if it's not their normal operating system, and we're going to be surrounded by super intelligence before we know it. I don't know who. There aren't many people in the world who I could ask who would have a more informed or unique perspective. So how can we begin to think about surviving and thriving in this future where before you know it, we're going to have double Einstein, triple, quadruple Einstein in months, really? How do we survive and thrive?
Yeah, look, I mean, remember that over the last 250 years, you've been prized for fitting into a system, which made you like everybody else. And the more you were like everybody else, the more you'd be prized. I mean, that was just like kind of the more you fitted into the system. The system itself is imploding, democratizing, demonetizing, and disrupting. And so what it means is that the system is gone, and now your prize is you fitting out the system. And so you've got to first understand that. Understand that everything you've been trained for is imploding, just like in agricultural times, all the work you did to understand the fields and to understand the seasons went away when production arrived with factories and tractors. This is exactly the same thing. So the first thing is understand that your skills of the past are becoming less relevant. Step one. Step two, how do you create optimism in an adventurous brain patterning so that you can go and adventure into things that you don't understand. And that all comes down to a calm nervous system. Now, the second point of this is that we've been addicted to certainty because of our educational system, our religious systems, and our organizational systems. This is all based on certainty. And it was Yuval Harari who said it. He said, if you go to a monkey and say to a monkey, look, monkey, you got 2 bananas. Let me take 1 banana away from you, because when you die and go to the other place, you'll get 4 bananas. And the monkey will say, stop talking shit. Give me my bananas back. Let me keep moving. And this is what all religions and organizations have done. It's like, you must self-sacrifice to get something ahead of you. Well, I don't know if that's really valid anymore in this day and age. So step 1, understand your skills of the past are not that relevant moving forward. And that's okay, because you're not alone. Most of us are in the same boat. 2, how do you create a calm nervous system within yourself to move yourself from a high beta, addicted to certainty brainwave to an alpha brain state, which allows you to be calm, exploratory, and have a wide, literally a wide perspective. Your eyes change when you move into an alpha brain state. And then when you're in that state, follow your golden thread of curiosity. And within no time, you'll start to realize that you are very, very unique in the way you see the world. And you're very, very unique in the way you connect invisible golden dots that only you can see. And as you start to share this combination with the world around you, you start to get people going, wow, I've never thought of it like that. And as more and more people start to say to you, guess what? You start to sell this unique perspective of yours. And this goes right across. Think about the creator economy in the world. Billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, growing at a rate. Why? Because people are just sharing their curiosity. Yes, you get some influencers that are just doing makeup and just like odd things, but don't get caught up in that story of, I don't want to do that because of the Kardashians. Like, yes, the Kardashians are like a 0.1% of that ridiculous world, but there's so many new teachers, so many new millionaires, so many people with freedom of life, just expressing their uniqueness. So it's an emotional journey for us to get there. First, understand that your lost skills and your old identity is gone. It's okay. It's not something you need to hold on to. It's okay for it to go. 2, can you create a calm nervous system? If you can, now you can be curious. Now you can start to package. And all of a sudden, you've developed yourself into a new type of person, because now this new type of person has now got a new awareness and is now able to become exploratory into uncertainty.
It comes back to AQ, right? We
Yes.
we must adapt and evolve.
Yes.
And that's the lesson of Charles Darwin. Survival of the fittest is about those who adapt. So what is a book that you might recommend for our audience?
Well, the latest, I don't really read books anymore. I'm a podcast person. I learn more from podcasts because the upgrade is better. And I can just say the podcast that I love the most is Scott Galloway and Prof G. And if you're looking at podcasts, it's a favorite one of mine. But you got to be okay with dirty teenage boy jokes, because that's what he has, and it's great. I love it. But also the book that I'm reading right now is The Age of Revolutions by Fareed Zakaria. And he's that CNN anchor, and has got a fantastic, very balanced, pragmatic perspective around the world. And so I'm busy reading Age of Revolutions and talking about the fact that we are again in another revolution at the moment. And we always come out on the other end of these revolutions with unexpected skills, unexpected potentials. And the people that are optimistic about the change win. The ones that are pessimistic are the ones that always lose, because that's what pessimism does to us. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so your superpower of the future is truly optimism. It really is, because you've already won the game before you've left the house. And this is not about positive thinking, but about developing the behavior of optimism, which is a very different skill that we have to spend time cultivating.
Awesome. What haven't we discussed that you wanted to cover off today?
Well, I think we've discussed all the important things, but I think what we've got to realize is the incredible power that AI is bringing for us. And the meditation that I do in some of my talks is, I don't know if you've ever done this, Brad, but have you ever done the ancestral meditation, where you close your eyes in a mind's eye, you imagine your father and mother behind you, and you imagine their fathers and mothers behind them, and fathers and mothers behind them. And in 10 generations, you have 1,072 fathers and grandfathers and mothers and grandmothers behind you, spurring you on, loving you, protecting you, engaging with you. And it's just a beautiful meditation to realize how much energy and power you have behind you, and how much you can rely on them. What AI is the combination of 7 billion people's smarts at the touch of your fingertips. And if you start to think about AI as this incredible combination of human intelligence that's now available to you, you can see it in a warmer, more engaging way and utilize it in that way so that it becomes a friend rather than an enemy, which is what most people are doing at the moment.
A threat.
And so when I try and relate it into a more warmer, engaging way, and the truth is, will it take your job? Yes, in your current format, it absolutely will, and it should. Because that will force you to start asking new questions about yourself. And guess what? If the Industrial Revolution didn't arrive, guess what you'd be doing? You'd be a farmer. You'd be a subsistence farmer right now. And would you want to be that? Of course not. And yes, people will say, yes, I just want the simple life. No, you don't. Your evolution would be slow, boring. What you want to be doing is moving at pace. And so here we are at another revolution. Are you excited about it? You're winning. If you're sad about it, you're losing. And that becomes the incredible privilege of choice that you have to see it as something that's going to help you or something that's going to disrupt you. And in fact, it's going to do both. And it's okay. And that's okay for it to do both.
Wonderful. I mentioned it earlier, but John, where can people find you?
You know, I don't know, for some fluke in my life, I'm the only John Sanei in the world. I have Googled John Sanei. No other John Sanei comes up. And then there we go. John Sanei, Sanei, on the internet. I have a podcast called The Expansive. I have a new book that I'm writing, which I promised I wouldn't start writing again, but I can't help myself, called The Age of Human Brilliance. And so this is a new book that's now starting to bubble under. And then I'm constantly sharing information, my latest research on TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So please join me on the journey. It'd be lovely to have you along.
John, thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a wonderful conversation, going in a whole range of different ways. And so thank you again so much for sharing your wisdom with me and our audience today.
My absolute pleasure. Great to be with you, Brad.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. If you'd be kind enough to leave a review for the podcast, that'd be really helpful to other like-minded entrepreneurs, and then we can grow our community. If you want to find out more about our guests, head over to evolutionpartners.com.au/podcast, where you can find show notes and other additional reading. Hope to see you back next week. Until then, keep thriving.